Hello there, all my lovely jewelry makers. I'm Christina at CSLdesigns, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this diagonal pyramids wire weave. So you get this really cool almost 3D effect, and you can of course use this weave for whatever you want to. So if you want to learn how you can make it, then keep watching. So then the wires will need 4 lengths of 1 mil here, and these will be the base wires. You can easily use more or less wires depending on the look that you want. And then we need 1 length of a 0.4 mil, which will be the weaving wire. So I'm going to start grabbing one of the base wires here and then also the weaving wire. You just want to leave a short little tail of the weaving wire, put it over the top of the base wire so we have that to hold on to there. Now I'm going to attach this weaving wire to the base wire by just wrapping it around once like that, and then just one more time. So we have 2 wraps here. And now what we're going to do is start off straight away by making the first pyramid. So we also obviously need to add in the other base wire. So I'm going to grab the next one, lay that above the first one, and then take the weaving wire, bring it behind both of them, and then come back down over the top of them both, and then repeat that. So we have 2 wraps over the top of both of them, and make sure that all your wraps are nice and tight. You can always grab your pliers and help tighten them up, and also make sure they're laying flat next to each other and not overlapping in any way. Now bring in the next base wire, lay that as the new top one, and then bring the weaving wire up behind all of them, back down over the top of all of them, and make sure to not pull too tight because we don't want the base wires to start coming towards each other. We still want to have those little gaps in between so we can fit in the weaving wire. So over the top there, and just like the other times, do that twice. So back up behind and then back down over the top, and then bring in the final base wire, lay that as the new top one, come up behind all of them, and again just wrap down over the top of them all, back up behind and back down over the top of them all. So again we have those 2 wraps right next to each other. So this is basically the midpoint of the pyramid. So we now need to work our way back downwards on the other side. So to do that I'm going to then come up behind them, but come up between the top 2 like that, and then bring that up, and you can always then use the wire itself here to help push down so the wraps become nice and tight. And then we're coming down over the top of the bottom 3, come up behind them again and up between the same wires, so we can do that double wrap over the top of the bottom 3, and then we're stepping down again, so come up between the 2 very middle wires, so we can then just wrap over the top of the bottom 2, up behind and up in the same place to again wrap over the top of those bottom 2. And then to finish off the pyramid here, we come up between the bottom 2 and then push that wire all the way down. And if you find that it's a little bit tough to get it all the way down because the base wires have kind of pulled together more, you can always use your pliers to help squeeze them into place, and then do a single wrap around the bottom base wire, and of course repeat again so we get 2 wraps. And that is then our first little pyramid there. Now I'm going to create the diagonal line that's going to be in between all the pyramids. So the weaving wire is coming up behind all of them. I'm going to make sure to bring it towards the left because I want this to lay diagonally right next to the side of the pyramid. So as I'm bringing it back down over the top of all the wires, I'm just making sure that I'm using my finger here to kind of help push it against the very top of the pyramid, and just do this again gently, so not too tight. Bring it down towards the bottom again, back up behind, and then back down over the top. So we again have 2 wraps lying right next to each other, and just make sure that they're as diagonal as possible here, and then come up behind all the base wires again. Now you will find that these 2 wraps that we just did will tend to want to kind of separate from the pyramid itself. So just keep pushing it down, because we then need to now start the next pyramid. Now this one is going to be in the opposite direction, so basically you could say upside down. So I'm just going to start doing that now from the top. So I'm going to wrap over the top of the very top base wire by itself first of all, and here you can then also use the weaving wire to help push those 2 diagonal wraps down nice and tight against the first pyramid, and of course just do 1 more around that top base wire, and then we need to continue building the pyramid. So now the point of it is going to be facing downwards here, so I'm going to go over the top of the top 2 base wires and wrap around that twice. So we're currently stepping up, you could say, towards the middle of the pyramid. Come up behind them again to come down over the top of now 3 base wires and repeat, so we get the 2 wraps, come up behind them all, and finally we reach the midpoint, so we need to come over the top of all the base wires, come up behind again, and over the top of them all again and up behind. So we're ready to now start stepping downwards, which means come down over them but then go down between the bottom 2, so we just wrap over the top of the top 3 and repeat that up behind them. So now we can wrap over the top of the top 2, which means I need to come down right in the middle of all the base wires. Again, try and make sure to not pull your weaving wire too tight, so we kind of close up space between the base wires, especially because the last wrap here that we need to do around the single wire, we need to have space for the weaving wire over the top again, and then now go down between the top 2 base wires so we can wrap around that top one by itself. And again, this is where you can tend to have pulled the base wires a bit too close because that's what it naturally wants to do. So if you need to, just help push the weaving wire into place with your pliers, and again just do that twice. And that is now the second pyramid done, just separated by those diagonal wraps. So from here we need to do the diagonal wraps again, but now just in the opposite direction. So bring the weaving wire over the top of all of them, down and come up behind again, and make sure you then use your finger to help push it as close to the pyramid as possible so we can come back over the top and do that second wrap, come up behind again. The next pyramid we're going to start doing now is in the same direction as the first one. So that means I need to come up between the bottom 2 base wires so we can just wrap around the bottom one by itself. And again, you can then use that to help push those diagonal wraps we just did closer towards the previous pyramid. Really emphasize that diagonal line. So wrap around that bottom one twice and keep pushing everything nice and tight. Now to build this next pyramid, this is going to be the exact same way as the first one, except we don't need to add in the wires obviously. So come up between the middle 2 so we can wrap around the bottom 2 base wires and repeat that. Up between the top 2 we can wrap over the top of the bottom 3 and repeat, and then for the midpoint of the pyramid we just wrap over the top of all of them and repeat. Now work our way back down, go up between the top 2 so we can wrap around the bottom 3 and stepping down 1 base wire every time, making sure to do 2 wraps every time as well until we're back down at the bottom here where I can then wrap around the very bottom base wire by itself, and again use that to help push everything nice and tight, and if you need to use your pliers to help squeeze it into place. And then we need to do the diagonal wraps again to kind of separate out the pyramid. So just come up behind all of them, use your finger to help push this wrap against the pyramid, and then just repeat. So we get the 2 wraps. And before moving on, just push it against the pyramid as much as possible. And then now the next pyramid we need to make is starting from the top. So that's the one where it's facing in the opposite direction. So that's basically how you make this wire weave, and just continue like this all the way until you have the length that you need. And this is then what the final weave looks like. So you get this really cool effect between the pyramids and the diagonal lines, and you can also use however many base wires you want to, whether that's more or less. Now I do have a playlist full of tutorials for loads of different wire weaves, so I'm going to leave a link so you can check that out. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.